Hi, hello, welcome to the channel Can't Glitchless. I'm a glitch, and I'm going to talk to you about a classic game, a visual masterpiece, a true work of art. It's Garfield's Scary Scavenger Hunt. Ain't that fun? Firstly, you might question, what is Garfield's Scary Scavenger Hunt? Well, to that I say, you are a foolish child. It's of course a Garfield-themed spooky browser game from the early 2000s. I think I found out that came out around 2002. The developers are a company known as Perfection Pastries, one I have tried to find information on, but I have seen a page showing they have a separate, unrelated Garfield game, but that's it. There's no more context, so I guess all they do is create browser Garfield games. Now, enough with this whole backstory thing, and let's dive into the actual game. Personally, I think the most important thing to discuss is the sound design. You might question, hey, that sounds like a stupid thing to talk about first, when we could be discussing the actual game. And to you, I say, have you played the game? Have you heard how absolutely monstrous those sounds are? And that's why I'm starting with it. Of course, it's very clearly just a simple around 20-second loop of thunder, generic spooky music, and wind. It's mostly kind of okay because you only play for around 15 minutes, but it gets real bad when you're someone like me who's had to watch it on repeat and repeat for this video. I'm gonna have to be honest, Garfield fandom, it's not a W. Yeah, I had to say it, I'm sorry. Besides that, I think the other sound effects are pretty cool. There's this split second reference to the movie Psycho. When you go into the bathroom and you come across this Lyman clone, and I think that was kind of cool. I like all the references to the classic monsters and stuff. On a quite a different note, I'd like to talk about the animations next. It's very clear they're just simple flash animations, which to those who aren't familiar with that, it's basically what normally people refer to simple digital puppet animations. And for those who are less familiar with the term puppet animation, it's just when you have an image, you squish and squash it around the screen, and it's a lot easier to do than frame by frame animation, so it comes out a lot smoother. Personally, I think this style quite fits Garfield. It's of course not saying that will ever rival the 1980s Garfield and Friends animation. That was just absolutely top tier. I really wish that we still did 2D animation like that. But I think it quite fits for a simple browser game like this, since it does feel like you're basically playing through one of the comics, which I quite like. It also has all of the, instead of having actual voice acting or text, it's all the text is in actual speech bubbles in the comics, which truly adds to that effect. A lot of the animations are pretty simple, but you got stuff like a unique walking cycle for each direction, except for left and right, since that's just flipped. I think it's pretty neat, simple but neat, but it does make me realize that we haven't really seen any big Garfield media where he walks in 2D in 20 years, which is just kind of awkward. I mean, you'll see some if you check out the Garfield's official social media pages, but besides that, it's everything about Garfield has just been 3D for a long time, which I'm gonna kind of miss the 2D personally. boy, it's a time we've all been waiting for, because now it's time to discuss story. To put it simply, Garfield is called to this big, scary, haunted house by a letter, and you might question, Garfield's a pretty big, forgive the term, scaredy cat. Why would he ever agree to go to this little haunted house? Well, the letter actually mentions the fact that there are 7 different kinds of pastries hidden within the house, which I think gives him the proper motivation, because, he would like to eat. Something a little interesting about the pastries is that compared to everything else where it's all drawn digitally, the pastries are actual images, which led me to believe, along with the developers' names being Perfection Pastries, that this was an advertisement, but I can't see anything mentioning that online, so it's just a theory. There's not much going for it for actual story, but there is some weird things that people use for theories. A common theory that's being cited around for the disappearance of Lyman is that he's trapped in John's basement, because if you're unfamiliar, Jim Davis, the creator of Garfield, wrote down 10 explanations as to what happened to Lyman, and one of them is the fact that, don't look in John's basement. And in this game, you can see Lyman in the basement. But the thing is that this is a random haunted house, and there's no proof this is the actual basement of the official Garfield house, so, just silly. It's also not mentioning the fact that there is a second Lyman in the game that's not brought up in the actual game. You see the character in the basement being referred to as Lyman, but the character upstairs does not get a name, but is the almost identical model to Lyman. So there's also little things, some people think this is the same haunted house as in the Garfield Halloween special, which I think could fit personally, but it does look a bit different. Now I think it's the right time to get into the gameplay. It's pretty simple. You basically move with the arrow keys on your computer. You can also use the arrow keys on the actual screen. You get to different areas by just walking off the screen. Fun fact, you don't need to walk into a door to actually go through it. You can walk underneath it, then up, because, they just set a simple hitbox where it's if Garfield walks into here, change screen. So that's kind of neat. Now you may have noticed this thing at the bottom of the screen called a scarometer. Well, that's where the other main mechanics comes in, so I have to explain that now. Well, basically, if you want to interact with something, you have to click on it. This could be used to pick up objects or just, hear what people are saying. You could go up to John and click on him and I'll give you some helpful tips. And it seems pretty simple. I mean, they even tell you what objects you need to get, which is actually pretty useful because I skipped over a bunch. But the way that they combat this simple mechanic is by adding this thing called the scarometer. Basically, certain objects that when you click on them, they'll produce a little jump scare. They'll stop you dead in your tracks and increase your scarometer. And basically, if you get it up all the way, Garfield runs like a little baby out of the house. In case you're worried about accidentally dying, it's helpful to know that also if you collect an object that you need for the game, it'll lower your scare score, which is really helpful. And it works for basically everything except for cheese because, There's also little mini games that you can sometimes find around the place. Like if you click on the bookcase, you can sort the books. Or if you go to the safe, you have to input numbers. Or if you go to the bats, But anyway, it's all in good fun, and I can't wait to start playing around, Okay, something I've neglected to mention so far is how I didn't actually complete the game. I didn't download it onto my computer. I instead went onto websites like friv.cm, which sounds really sketchy. to play the game because I thought that would be easier. But I think they don't have all of the game downloaded, or those are the aspects that went down with Flash, because you can't do that anymore. And if you try and click on the bookcase or like the bats, it'll just not work. It'll just stop you right there. And you can continue, but you just can't beat the game because you can't complete those things. And also, if you click on the safe in those versions, it'll just stop you from being able to leave, which is really unfortunate. I mean, at least you could complete some parts of the game, but not if you click on the safe. I guess the game understands that if you click on it, you should stop moving, but doesn't know that you should complete the game. This doesn't really seem like a problem if you like download it off like the Internet Archive. I'm just assuming. I don't actually know. I did download it, but anyway, just don't use the browser. It doesn't really work. Anyway, since I'm talking about glitches, there's this really weird glitch where sometimes when you use the shovel out in the graveyard, Garfield will just walk into it for eternity, not actually going forward. It doesn't soft lock the game. You can just click any of the arrow keys and he's gonna stop, but you know, it's kind of neat. Alright, now it's finally time to delve into the final thoughts. I genuinely enjoyed this game. It's just a good browser game. Of course, it's like simple and repetitive. It's just the same game every time, but it's okay because it's not trying to be like this big thing. You're not thinking you're gonna get this next big FNAF game and then get security breached, which immediately breaks. It's just Garfield browser game. But you know, I'm kind of biased. I have a love for games off like websites like Friv because I grew up with them. And also Garfield because I just adore everything Garfield related. But you know, if you're like me, I think you'd genuinely enjoy the game. Just make sure to like mute the audio or something because it's genuinely horrible to listen to that 15-second repeat of the same music over and over. Even in the musical section where you play the piano, you don't need the music because it just glows. Also, make sure you have spooky music playing and some donuts to eat to be truly immersed in the game, you know?